When it comes to securing your applications in the cloud, it can be overwhelming. How will you assure you have the right tools and controls to provide a good security posture? How will you protect yourself from hackers? One approach to beat a hacker is to think like one. So what are we waiting for? Let's watch one in action.
This is very exciting. Being out in the field with you know. It's a bit of a dream for me. Love your disguise, by the way. You look just like him. It's a shame we're not wearing masks. You know, like full masks. Everybody gets to wear a mask but Benji. Sorry, I'm tense. I babble when I'm nervous.
Okay, 7 security guards, X-ray machines, cameras, metal detectors, just what we expected. We can do this.
Товарищ генерал-полковник, майор Егоров, ваши документы, пожалуйста.
Начальство надо знать.
Извините, пожалуйста, товарищ генерал-полковник, не узнал.
Ты пожалеешь, рядовой Егоров.
I think that went quite well.
Заткнись. Здравствуй.
The nest is empty.
Check in, team leader.
Over. Repeat. Check in, team leader.
Have you made it to the archive room?
Капитан! Архивная комната!
Someone is piggybacking our frequency.
Team leader.
Awaiting your go sign. Standing by to detonate.
Abort.
Okay, so what has to do this with cloud security? Well, hackers follow the same principles, be that the physical world, metaverse, or cloud. Let's break it slowly and see how we can defend against these different tactics. As we can see from the very start, it all starts by assuming a different identity, an identity impersonation. Someone from the organization, someone that has authority and access. Like we see here, Ethan Hunt chose to be a general, so he can go around into different restricted areas and have authority over others. And you can see here as he's walking with his friend that no one even asks what kind of suitcases he's carrying around. So it all starts by trying to protect your identity. So this is what we call identity and access management. Why is it important? It's very important because hacking humans is much easier than hacking a secure system. We've all seen that with all the different phishing emails. An email coming from your bank saying, please use this URL to change your password, and so on and so forth. Once the hacker gets access to your username and password, then they'll be able to infiltrate the system and do whatever they want. So it also starts by education, making sure you do have the strong passwords, you rotate your password, you use multiple factor authentication, and so on. Make sure you educate your customers, your users, everyone that uses your system. Make sure they have that kind of education. And to be more specific, it's very important that you document who has access to your system and what can they access and what can they do with that access. Whether the who is whether it's user or customers or the admins who have access to your system, and what kind of access do they have? Do you have access to the data, to the website, to the servers, whatever it is, and what can they do with it? Can they read, write, and so on and so forth? All of that is very important that you document clearly that who has access to what. As we can see here from the clip, there are areas that are available for public, like the reception area, and there are areas that are restricted, and like the ones that has all the archive and such. How do we map that to the cloud? It follows the same principle as the physical buildings. Same way in the cloud, you have your own virtual private cloud. Basically here it's what I call a VPC. And you do have your entrances, which is here, it's called the internet gateway. The way that you architect your workload is you try to do the same thing as you do with the buildings, which is you'll have a public subnet, a public area in which customers will have access to it, and you have the private area which is restricted to your own staff or special applications and such. So the way that we do it, we call it public subnet and private subnet, and from in there you have your own resources. We assign a public subnet versus a private subnet is basically by making sure that the route table contains an internet gateway or not. As you can see from the clip, that the entrance has these different scanning machines, whether it's to scan the people and what they're carrying, or actually the objects like the suitcases or the bags that he's carrying. And they have their own security warrant and everything. So they're adding their different controls so that they can see if there's anything that's look dangerous that's coming inside the building. Same thing with the cloud. We do have what we call firewalls and shields. These will inspect all the traffic that's coming in and make sure that the traffic is safe enough for us to consume in our workload or on our virtual private cloud. And let's not forget our favorite security guard, which actually would inspect your documents and make sure that you are on the right path. Same thing goes for our cloud. We have what we call our security group. It's the same, it does the same thing as a security guard. It inspects the traffic and makes sure that this have access to certain ports or certain protocols. Other than that, it won't allow it to access that resource. So security group is specifically for the resources, while the shield and firewall is for your general entrance, for your traffic that generally enters your virtual private cloud. Next, we've seen that there were cameras all over the place. These are being used for monitoring, and there's a control center in the back end in which the security guards can see all the different cameras at one place. This is very important that you monitor any changes or any that are unexpected and be able to identify them as soon as possible. Well, this is what we call detective controls. You want to be able to monitor your workload and determine if there's any abnormal activities there. What kind of can you monitor in the cloud? Well, in general, any logs and traces, you need to be able to look at that. But to be more specific, these would be like your network traffics, your API calls, any changes in your resources that you have there, all the different logs, all of these, you can actually monitor them. But these logs and traces can be huge, and what we need a system or a service that will allow to look at all of these logs and traces and detect any anomalies. These are usually categorized into 3 different buckets. One of them is threat detection, identifying any threats. The other one is vulnerability inspection, which determines if a certain resource should be patched to the newest update but has not been done yet. And metrics alarms. This is where you have to find what metrics are important for you to see any changes, and these are where you put alarms to alarm you as soon as possible. And all of these should go into one control center, which is your dashboard, so you can have a quick overview of what's going on, and you can link the different changes and make sure that it's an actual a threat detection versus just an anomaly. Next control that they met was the encrypted locks, and he used this fancy little device to brute force his way in. But basically, it's all about encrypting the access to different areas of that has your data, and this is important. To map that to our cloud, it's all about what we call data protection, being able to encrypt your data at rest and in transit as it moves around and as you use it in use. And it's important to note, let's not have one encryption key for all your different data at rest and in transit and you use. Like here in the movie, you can see that all the locks have the same code. Okay. Last thing here, it's about incident response. What happens when you detect a threat? Here in the movie, we can see that they all went to respond to that threat once they determined that something's not right. And this is what we call an incident response. And I only have one word for that. It is run book. Make sure you have a run book that tells you what to do when there's an incident, when a threat is detected. You'll be able to know how to isolate the incidents, how to respond to it, and how to communicate to customers. All of that has to be within the run book. Other than that, it's going to be a state of chaos and panic. Like you see here, everyone is running and no one is even attending to that dashboard. So it's important to have that run book in place. These 5 principles, which is the identity and access management, detective controls, infrastructure protection, data protection, incident response, are the fundamental of having a proper security posture. There are a lot of different tools and services to allow to do that, and you customize that according to your actual workload. Your job is not to...
Okay, this is a slight wrinkle. We're going to have to go into the server room from the outside.
Oui?
I'm on the computer.
Jump out of the window, but just to make it impossible for hackers to be able to get access to your system.